Could you please request everyone to come inside? Welcome back. Let's resume towards the next session based on innovations in the pharmaceutical sector. I would now take the opportunity to invite Dr. Ronald Heslegrave, Chief of Research, William Osler Health System, on the dais for keynote address for this session.
Good morning, everyone. I think our first job is to round up the rest of the stragglers outside, so everybody go and pick one and bring them back. So it's my great pleasure to stand here before you today, and I want to thank Dr. Singh for inviting me to give this keynote address. I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about Brampton and what we do at my institution, which is a 3-hospital institution called William Osler Health System. And many people in this audience will probably know of William Osler, who was a very famous physician in the U.S., actually born in the area where our hospital is, and of course started the medical school at Johns Hopkins University, etc. So I'll spend a couple of minutes doing that, but then what I want to do really is to share with you the findings of an expert panel that we put forward in Canada to deal with the issue of research integrity. One of the reasons I wanted to share this with you in some detail today is I think this is something that cannot and should not be overlooked, because as you've heard in many of the other presentations, what we are all about here is having evidence guide our decisions about how to improve, how to provide the best quality care to our patients. But in order to do that, the evidence needs to be sound. And we have had far too many examples in the West of breaches in research integrity, which pulls into question not only the particular investigator, but also all of their findings and all of the studies that followed findings that were in fact false. So we can't afford to not take this into account as we move forward. So I'll spend a few minutes. As I said, Brampton is actually part of the Greater Toronto area, and we are in the process in Brampton of building a life sciences healthcare sector cluster. As you can see here, because people have asked me where is William Osler and is it anywhere near Toronto? Well, it's about 30 minutes away from Toronto, so still within the Greater Toronto area, and we're right next to that. And we're building this healthcare cluster because we have there's a lot of value in the area that we're in. We have 40% of the life science companies in this area. We have over 100 biotech firms within a 30-minute drive, and we have 50 at the top 100 life sciences studies or companies that are 16 of the top 25 worldwide that have their headquarters, Canadian headquarters, in the Brampton area. So we think we're well positioned. We're actually a very young population, and in this area we have a very diverse economic base. And as we're home to great transportation centers. We're the closest hospital system to the airport, so we're ideally located from that point of view, and we are extremely diverse in terms of the number of languages spoken and number of different cultural groups represented in our area. So we are a microcosm of the world in Brampton, and we're continually being sought out in the personalized medicine space, and we have a number of clinical trials going on in the personalized medicine space for things like the different, usually untested genotypes, for instance, for hepatitis C, and we're making great strides in that area because we're providing the genotypes that you really can't find in downtown Toronto or elsewhere. So again, just to show you that we are serious about this, and the province put in $500 million to build our health and wellness center in this area, and it's focused on preventative care, the first of its kind in Canada, really, and also we have attracted the university to open a campus there with $190 million from the provincial government. So we are moving, and we hope to be a force to be reckoned with in the future. So when you think of Canada, think of Brampton, and that is my pitch for the city. I said I would do that. So to come back to research at Osler, we focused our efforts here on applied research. How do we make this happen for our population? And we, as a very, very large community hospital, we are focused on patient care and how to improve that care as opposed to other academic pursuits where the academic health science centers are largely focused. And so we want to use our communities, and we do have a global health outreach program as well, and we have partnered in India here with DMCH in Ludhiana, where I'm going tomorrow on both clinical and research activities, but also we have partnered with Apollo here as well. So just this is really, these are the research pillars we're looking at, multi-generational and multicultural communities, engaging patients in their own care so that we can have patient-inspired care, access, sustainability, and integration with the healthcare system and chronic disease prevention and management. We are not in the business of discovery research. We have recently been very successful. This is a slide of grants that the Ontario government gave last year, and you'll see on the first and the third panels of the 4 funded for this, we received 2 of those 4 on a province-wide competition. The first one being using an armband, a blood pressure cuff, that's all automated as a cardiac intervention to be applied in the hospital, in the ambulance in the community prior to being transported to our cath lab at William Osler. The third being a novel approach to a dialysis catheter, which is going to have a great deal more sustainability than current catheters because of its antithrombotic nature. So it will not clog with repeated use for a long time, again making the life of dialysis patients much easier. But today I'm going to go back to the basics, and I'll welcome you to join me. And I'm going to talk about research integrity and the findings from our expert panel a few years ago, which outlines some of the problems, outlines some of the details, provides some conclusions I think would be equally applicable to India as you move down the road, because we can't afford to have research findings distorted And since this report, we've had actually numerous occasions in Canada, but also around the world, of breaches in research integrity and whole lines of research based on famous articles in The Lancet, in BMJ, in New England Journal of Medicine, etc., all of which stem from a key paper that was published or papers that were published and then retracted some 8 years or 10 years later because the original findings were in question and in fact in a number of areas falsified. So it's a big issue. And I'm going to bring this back to something near and dear to everyone's heart here, which is the Supreme Court ruling in 2013 to enhance the protection of participants in clinical trials. And tried to, it really basically led to stopping all clinical trials in India and drastically reducing, because of the increased impediments forced by the Supreme Court decision, and some of the things they were looking at was compensation for clinical injury, which was limited, limiting the number of clinical trials that an investigator may be part of, audio and videotaping informed consents, and imposing deadlines for SAE, serious adverse event reporting, all of which was absent. This led to some discussions that we had, and I was privileged enough to have some discussions at the time of this with Dr. Chaudhry when we were at a conference in Bangalore in 2013, and I've been following this rather closely since. And this discussion isn't over here. I'll just point you to the Indian Society of Clinical Research published a special article in the July to September 2017 journal with some 11 articles outlining continuing concerns in this area. So in the Canadian landscape, we have no end of funding bodies and oversight bodies, and so you'd think with this we would be beyond reproach for issues of research integrity, which I can assure you is not the case. So we all have things to learn. Canada took a leading role, and the chief scientist led a conference in 2007, which ended up spurring on the first World Congress on research integrity in Lisbon. And the second World Congress was in Singapore a couple of years later. And this was interesting because this sort of coincided with our expert panel moving forward. But as you can see, there is a standing list of research integrity conference, including one in Amsterdam just earlier this year. So it was recognized by the government that the environment was changing. There's really zero tolerance for misconduct, and privacy legislation has made things more complex for investigators and for people carrying out research activities, especially clinical trials. And there's increasing sensitivity to these concerns on top of the research integrity concerns. And the public is becoming, because we have a publicly funded healthcare system, is becoming very aware of and much more cognizant of what taxpayers' dollars are being used for. And one blemish on that is funding research that is not credible in the end. So research is, So I don't have to point out to you that research is vital for the advancement of the social, medical, public policy, and economic agendas, and trusted by the public and decision makers and other researchers to value the outcomes of research and support the implementation of changes to current standards so that this system does not fail. We've taken various stabs at it in Canada, and in fact commissioned a independent private firm to conduct an analysis of this, and that firm really found out that this is Canada does not have a harmonized system. We really have a hub and spoke model, and so it's a very decentralized system, which is part of the problem that we had. We also discovered in this, on this expert panel that there's really no definition of misconduct, nor what one should do about it. It's left to individuals to make the decisions, and I can tell you that in fact they make decisions on their best interests and not the interests of society at large. So interestingly then, the Federal Minister of Industry, and I say this with some emphasis because it was industry, not health, that actually commissioned the Council of Canadian Academies to study this and comprise an expert panel made up of a university president emeritus, a number of VPs research from around the country, and included US and UK representation on this to make sure that we were kept honest in our opinions. And this was a report that was put out and is available online. And I'll just go through some of this because it looks like they're going to try and keep me to my 15 minutes on this. So I will move forward with some of it. So some of the questions were asked was what are the research integrity principles, procedural mechanisms, and practices in order to do this. And we were tasked with a number of things. You know, would a common definition of research integrity help? Is it any different in the Canadian context than in other jurisdictions? And we need to come up with a system and definitions that would actually support the highest ethical standards and instill public confidence in the findings that come out. A variety of questions were addressed, and I can make these slides available to you in the interest of time, and you can go through them. One of the key questions that we had to ask ourselves is, do we know how big the problem is? And after a lot of searching and review of the literature and talking with a variety of relevant experts and various panel members who are very proficient in their own areas of expertise, we decided we didn't know how big the problem was. So we're going to propose something to be fixed where we couldn't identify what the problem was. And I think the reason for that is that we concluded was that this is so decentralized, it never gets reported centrally, so these are all unreported incidents, and so we have no idea of how big the problem is. A lot of the estimates say integrity is breached on a regular basis, but the evidence is scant on how to move forward. We concluded that what we really wanted to do, there were two approaches to this. One can either take a look at this from a punishment point of view, how do we deal with misconduct or move forward, or you can take a look at this problem with a more positive approach, and we chose the more positive approach to this, so that we could instill research integrity as a principle that needed to be followed, as opposed to a misconduct being a breach for which you're going to be punished. So we chose the carrot and not the stick. And we came up with what that takes, you'll see in this slide, with a common definition of research integrity at the core, values that are needed to support that, principles that flow from that, and trying our best to move towards promotion and prevention, but in the final analysis, sanctions levied on those that breach all of this should be of interest. So again, these are the definitions of research integrity, and it all rests on honesty, fairness, trust, accountability, and openness. Themes you've heard about earlier discussions today. And these are defined in this report, so I turn you to this report, and the principles all flow from this as well. Again, there's a lot of information here, but I wanted to give you an overview of where this panel came to and what we needed in order to foster a system-wide research integrity environment, which we thought would go much further than simply sanctions against those who breach. Let's see. So the U.S. system really is centered on fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism, but where they actually impose their sanctions is often when there's financial misconduct that goes along with that, and so we need to worry about that. We also decided that some things could be handled locally, but really the more important cases need to be handled centrally. And I'll skip over this one. A very interesting thing about moral rights we came across. Governments were asking investigators to waive their moral rights and let them use the data however they wanted and reinterpret, which we felt was a breach of integrity from a government level. So we decided that what was really needed was a Council for Research Integrity at the national level, and its goals would be to collect the information, provide confidential advice, gather the important cases together, disseminate these and report on them, and promote best practices. So that's it in a nutshell, and I think I'm within my time. Again, a theme that we've heard today, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. And we certainly took that approach on the expert panel, and I think this is something that is so fundamental to moving things forward and doing healthcare in different ways that we can't afford to have those findings breached by falsification or fabrication. And that's critical to moving forward, and I would strongly suggest that as you move forward in India, you think about having some centralized resource that can deal with these issues, because in fact, when you start looking, they come up every day. As someone who has chaired ethics committees for over 25 years, I'm always called upon on a regular basis to say, is this a breach in integrity? And really that's only in the last few years. Before that, they didn't call us because we had an obligation to report. It stayed in administration and we never knew about it. So again, I would direct you to this, this report and use some of those principles to move forward in how you look at oversight with regard to enhancing and changing the world of research in healthcare to move things into the community and have sustainable new targets and approaches to the provision of care that you're all searching for. With that, I'll say thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Please take your seat. I now request our session moderator, Dr. Shiban Ganju, Chairman, Atrimed Pharmaceuticals, founder, Save a Mother Foundation, on the dais. I also request the panelists to please come up on the stage. We have with us Dr. V.K. Sharma, Vice President, Marketing and Sales, Unichem Labs Limited. Dr. Vinod Nikhra, Senior Chief Medical Officer, Senior Administrative Grade, Hindu Rao Hospital. Dr. Anjana Batni, Research Division Project Head, Atrimed Biotech. And Mr. Ashish Kumar, CEO, Medicea Technology Solution. I now request Dr. Shiban Ganju to please commence the session.
Thank you for inviting us. We're going to get started without much ado. Our format will be each speaker speaks for 5 minutes. Please say one line about yourself so I don't have to do it, and keep it short to the point. Please try to make all your points within 5 minutes so we can have a Q&A and interactive session. Thank you. We will go in that order. Dr. Sharma goes first, Dr. Nikhra goes next, and Anjana goes third, in that order. So let's get started. Thank you.
So good morning to all of you. Myself VK Sharma. In fact, yesterday and today, say most of the speakers has been talking on different aspect of healthcare. But probably I was the first one to belong to pharma industry. So my responsibility talking on the behalf of pharma industry, which no other speaker has spoken. See, when we speak of pharma industry innovations, we primarily expect basically searching of the new chemical entities or new molecules. Almost, when you look at situation 3 decades back, India as a country in the pharma, we were depending on the developed countries, and we were importing medicines, and they were very costly. Indian industry was not very developed. Then in 1986, Indian government came with the pharma policy, which was working till now. As a result of that, where Indian pharma industry fully utilized that, and if you look at, say, after 3 decades, what results are there in the numbers? They are like this. Some of the number I'll just read out, which are very interesting as compared to our other healthcare parameters. One is, India, we are the most, you can say, economical as far as the pharmaceutical products are concerned, even as compared to our neighboring country, whether it is Pakistan, whether it is Bangladesh, whether it is Nepal, the most economical medicine you get in India. Second is, India is the 3rd largest as far as volume is concerned in the world, production of pharma. And by value, we are 10th largest because of our economy. When we talk of the quality, India is known for the quality medicine. As a result of that, 30% of the US generic requirements are being filled up by the Indian companies. And US, which is very particular about the quality, they have their own FDA. FDA has got office only in 2 places in the world. One is in USA, otherwise in India. So basically they keep on going auditing in the India, and most of the Indian companies, they comply with those requirements. So we are the quality part, we are the one among the best in the world. We export to almost to 200 countries in the world as a Indian different pharmaceutical countries. And when we look at a more of a statistics point of view, out of every 3 pills which is consumed in the world, 1 is already made in India. So almost 1/3 is being produced in India. It's something bigger one. When we look at, say, earning of foreign revenue, pharmaceutical is already as the 3rd largest foreign revenue generator for country. But despite all that, there was some limitations was there. And as a result of that, a couple of months back, Indian government has come with a white paper on pharmaceutical industry. And some of the concern which they raise is, in last 30 years, as far as innovation is concerned, Indian pharma industry has primarily focused on the new drug delivery systems, or you can say better dosage form or the packaging, not much on the finding new chemical entities, because that used to be a very costly affair. Secondly, there was some difference in the quality which we export to the world and what we consume in India. That is second point which is major raised by them. Third point, despite being such a good quality medicine manufactured in India, our dependence of the API or bulk drug is still on the import. Almost 60% of the bulk drug or API is still we are importing, which is basically a threat to the national security also, because major part of that comes from a neighboring country. So that also concern raised in that white paper. And government at the same time, despite being such an economical, expect us to make that pharma product can be even more economical. Looking into all these things, Government of India has come up with the new drug pharma policy. It's basically a draft stage currently. And when I look at that, it's a right move from the government. This will further promote research or API in India. And next, I'm expecting next maybe a couple of years after the due discussions, this policy will be implemented. And as a pharma industry will come out with a much more flying colors. And not only in finished product or formulation, in APIs also, in bulk drug also, in researching also, Indian pharmaceutical industry will be in a much bigger industry. One more factor I want to highlight, so two factors. One is you look at, say, different industries. Normally we heard of different Indian companies are being taken over by the MNCs, which very commonly we hear. But in pharma industry, which is very common, is the Indian companies had taken over MNCs. It's not only among the most developed country like America, whether it's Japan, whether Israel, whether UK, almost every country, it is the Indian company who has gone there and purchased their companies. So which this happened only in the pharma industry. And secondly, it's about giving back to the society. You see a lot of detection camp, which government of India also want. A lot of camps are being done by the pharma industry. Pharma industry is very active in the supporting different academic requirement of medical fraternity. They are supporting there also. At the same time, we are tied up with the different government bodies in the research, and we are working, different companies are working with the different bodies so that the coming time we can come out with a newer molecule. At the same time, this, we can support these research initiatives also. So these are some brief, I think 5-7 minutes, Dr. Ganju, about the pharma industry. And then I think I'll come back, and when you have some more question, I'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I thank the organizers of InnoHEALTH for inviting me. And I will begin by remembering one Dr. Rene Favalero. He was the guy, Argentine doctor at Cleveland Clinic, who went for innovation. He discovered that saphenous vein can be used for cardiac bypass. It is exactly 50 years from his discovery, and he made the cardiac bypass possible. So this was the one innovation, and he identified the problem, looked around, and innovated by discovering that saphenous vein can be used for cardiac bypass surgery. Another topic I will like to talk about is, this is hologram. Hologram is going to be a diagnostic modality of the coming years. I presume that you can remember Star Wars movies and Avatar movies, where the 3-image creation was depicted. This is a true 3D viewer based on eco-pixel technology. In a hologram, you can see the whole internal picture in a 3D modality, which can be moved around, zoomed in and out, and manipulated in the actual 3D space. And this is being considered a revolutionary technology which can be used in miniature cardiac surgery, brain surgery, and various other modalities. In fact, the technology is going to be available. There is a real view imaging by Israel, Zebra imaging by USA, and Origo is from Belgium, Holexia and Lindsay from Switzerland. Then third thing I want to talk about is artificial heart. See, right now the artificial heart can be implanted in patients who need cardiac transplantation. And this is a temporary arrangement till the person gets the permanent cardiac transplantation. 2-3 companies, they are marketing artificial heart. One is Syncardia, and recently Abbott got the FDA approval. Artificial heart implantation has been done here itself in Delhi by Escort. They have got few patients. The modality is quite costly. it costs around 1 crore of rupees to get artificial heart transplantation. But of course, it's available. Third thing I want to talk about is therapeutic agents, which are cardioprotective, and these compounds can dilute the detrimental effect of unhealthy lifestyles, and they can dilute the unhealthy effect of genome defect also. Some of these compounds are already in use in clinical practice, like quinine Q10, resveratrol, carnitine and levocarnitine. And there are some future compounds like heat shock protein 20 and heat shock protein 27 activators, which are going to come in coming years. There are some compounds for brain disorders like paralysis and other things. Compounds like citicoline, pitacetam, ginkgo biloba, they are already in use. Of course, their use is limited. More and more physicians should be made aware about their effectivity. So, the patients of paralysis and other chronic brain diseases can make a good recovery. Finally, I would like to add that heart disease are unmet challenge for physicians, they are unmet challenge for researchers as well as for the innovators. Thank you.
I think we're losing energy. I got to get up. There's less energy in the audience. So I want to preface our next speaker, Dr. Batni. Since this is a pharma panel, let me interject my 2 pennies worth for 2 minutes where pharma industry or the pharma innovation is going. We learned the human body as a system of organs and tissues and cells and products like this. But what we are going to now is a systems biology approach. In other words, a human body is a conglomeration of biochemical processes which are scattered around nodes, which are the functional nodes, and nodes that interject, make hubs with each other. So if you look at the human body, not at the way we see each other in physical terms, but are constantly happening biochemical reactions, and there's only one sole purpose, and that is to keep this person alive. It's so exquisite that the pH does not change from anywhere beyond 7.4, and the potassium does not go from anywhere below 3.5, 5.4, the temperature stays at the same degree all your life. So to me, it's a miracle that how it's happening. So the approach to drug discovery is moving towards systems biology, looking at human body's networks. In fact, the systems biologists in 2008 got together in Japan, and it's called the Tokyo Declaration. And they have said by 2038, which is about how many years from now? About 20 years from now, we'll have 90% of the biochemical processes of the body mapped. What that means is this, that you have an in silico or a computational pharmacology coming up that you don't have to go to the human beings, at least in 90% of times. You can interject your theoretical molecule into the system and see what happens, which gives you all the reactions, adverse actions, proper targeting, and so on and so forth. So this is number one. Now, I'm passionate about Ayurveda only because it's been our system, A, and B is fascinating because plants were here much before the pharma industry. Plants were here, plants on this planet were born about 2 billion years ago. The planet is 4 billion years old approximately. And the pharma industry is only 200 years old. So my contention is this: plants are biochemical processes. They manufacture whatever is available for their survival. So these are chemical factories. I'm of the belief that plants have many more molecules than we ever know. And they're already there. Plants don't get bacterial infection, it doesn't go to staphylococcal, they don't get boils, so there's got to be some inbuilt mechanism. Our foraging cows do not get cholera. So the idea is, it's within the system and process evolution, we already evolved molecules. Can we look at the whole world? And Ayurveda, or for that matter, the rest of the systems of the world, traditional systems, address these issues already. There were 25,000 molecules that we know by phytochemistry that are available in the world only to be rediscovered or redone. So I belong to a group that has converted these 25,000 molecules in IT glossary. You tell me a chemical, I'll tell you which plant it comes from. You tell me a symptom, I tell you what the old system says, the treatment, and so on and so forth. So we get this mapping software to translate old into new. In our system, which is Ayurveda, the Charak, Sushruta, and Bhagavat are the three main authors, 100 BC plus minus, and there are 50 other textbooks, plus there's a folk medicine. And we have collected or collated all the available knowledge and does this tinkering with this and produce this proprietary software which we use. And we use generating leads. And we have multiple leads now that we're working on. To me, it's very exciting that we are the cutting edge and we're using modern tools which are available for Charak and Sushruta, but they were geniuses, and we have them available now, current computational bioinformatics or biotechnology and microbiology, et cetera, and I'll hand over to Dr. Anjana Batni, who's a hardcore scientist, will elucidate on that. How do we take this from Charak to, I want to make an alliteration, Charak to what? Charak to Chicago, that's where I come from. All right, let's do it. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm a research scientist and a molecular biologist. And I'm associated with a startup in Bangalore. And we are trying to modernize Ayurveda, as he pointed out already. Here?
I requested a stand-up.
Okay. So Ayurvedic texts define how to identify diseases, how to diagnose diseases, how to treat them, manage them. But they also have vast data on plants and plant molecules. And currently, less than 1/10 of the data that is in these texts is in practice, is in use. So there's a vast source of untapped data, and which is what we have tapped into now. And based on these texts, we have developed a library of molecules composed of secondary metabolites from these plants. And we have about 2.85 lakh molecules in our digital library. And we perform high throughput screening on our library to look for lead molecules, plant-based lead molecules. And then we are now in the process of establishing in vitro and in vivo assays to validate our molecules so that we can go into clinical trials and enter the market. So what we are trying to do basically is to bridge the gap between pharma and traditional medicine.
Okay. Awesome. She said in brief, because we don't want to bore everybody with science and molecules and so on, but it's a cutting edge work. For example, our current work is people who are interested is on inflammatory pathways. And what are the plant-based molecules that react with the interleukin or suppress interleukin, enhance interleukin? In fact, we do have a compound which somehow the other, we are all amazed, antagonizes IL, interleukin 17. So it's a cutting edge work. Number two is this. I'm of the, almost like a religious belief that every disease is an infectious disease, minus the body injuries and so on and so forth. Because if you see a genome, it's a bunch of viruses. We came from viruses. Those of you have read Dawkins' selfish gene will understand how you look at the body as a gene protecting itself and is created as humongous apparatus called the human body just to protect the selfish gene. So we are genes at the end. So from genes to the genomics, and then you have the transcriptomics and the proteomics and so on and so forth. This omics research of the human body, if we match it with the research and the plant kingdom, so you have a network of molecules and network biology matching each other. And we discovered something quite interesting, that we found that subtherapeutic doses, which has been used in traditional medicine, attacking multiple molecules probably is much more effective than a single target discovery and single target drug, which has been the current paradigm. So this concept is just 10 years old. It's nothing new. It's only 10 years ago this systems biology approach and the network biology approach to pharma discovery has taken off. And we're quite proud to say that we are pioneers in India, and hopefully we'll be able to give you all guys a molecule from Charaka, or maybe multiple molecules from Charaka. That'll be the day I'll say, all right, we have arrived. I'll pass on to the next speaker. Sir, please introduce yourself, one-liner, and then you got 6 minutes.
Thank you.
We always prefer good-looking people, so 6 minutes. You get 1 minute extra.
All right, thank you. I am Ashish, and I run a small company, small startup, in the pharmaceutical supply chain area. So we've really talked about a lot of different discoveries in pharma and how do we develop molecules and advancements in research and advancements in development of medicines and how the body functions. Now my role comes a little different. The problem that we are trying to solve is twofold primarily, I would say. The first one is once the molecule is discovered and the medicine is out there in the market, how do you ensure that the right medicine reaches to the people? For example, I'll quote a few instances, a few market stats from Unichem last year. They had an industry report saying the fake and counterfeit drugs in India is growing, that business in India is growing at a 25% CAGR and will touch $10 billion in India this year, 2017. Now that's a massive, massive number and really worrisome factor. We are trying to address that. So we built tools and technology that we believe, and in partnership with IBM, and after the session you can come over and we can show you how it works. We have built tools and technology to ensure that this problem is completely eradicated from the market. If we protect a product through our system, there is no way you can inject or anybody can inject a counterfeit or fake item into the supply chain. So that's one problem we try to address. The second problem that we are addressing is once the medicine is in there in the system, the pharmaceutical company or, for example, the regulatory authorities, you want to have a deep insight into demographic medicine usage pattern. For example, you want to find out in a particular zip code, if you get to know that in a particular zip code, a set of zip codes, there is high evidence of oncology drugs being used or heart ailment drugs being used, that signifies something. So we build tools and technology that gives you extremely deep demographic medicine usage pattern. We call it Insight on Meds. So these are the two primary problems that we are trying to address, and it's a pharmaceutical supply chain logistics technology company. We'll be very happy to explain to you how the product works and demo, etc. But yeah, that's what we're trying to solve at Medicea.
It's really exciting. Sorry to interrupt. That's really exciting. I'd like to talk to you on one-on-one later to see how we can protect our stuff in the market from spurious drugs. We're open to Q&A. So please identify yourself and ask a brief question. It is a Q&A, not your lecture versus my lecture. So just a question will do. And one of us will try to answer. And if we don't have the answer, we'll shut up. And next question will take, please. We're not compelled to answer if we don't have the answer. Please.
Right. Okay, what I really, very short one. I'm really impressed first time. Something on phytochemistry and all, because I'm also, and Ayurveda and pharmaceutical, how it's taking. I find a lot of articles come from Western world and not from India, though the thing has come from India, even my magazine. Yes, you are Indian. He is US Chicago citizen, and I hope things will work out together, Indo-US. A very suggestion. Ayush Ministry has been created newly in Indian, and they are looking for visibility. And Dr. Sethi, I know her, she's advisor to the minister. She's from homeopathy anyway. So I think this is a worth case for taking it up for funding if you are interested. I'll send a letter to her if you are interested.
We are looking for funding, of course.
Okay, so yeah. I'll introduce you. I think the Ministry of
That's
Ayush can become
suggestion.
your partner.
Thank you.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to pass my hat a little later, connect donations for our funding. And next question, anybody else? Yes, sir. Yes, Colonel. Colonel, did I get it right? Did I read it right? Yeah.
Good morning. My question is to you, Mr. Ashish. I must compliment you for the kind of work that you are doing.
Thank you.
What the basic doubt I had was, how are you going to get the demographic data from various places? What methodology are you adopting to generate that, demographic data pertaining to onco cases or certain other cases, particularly in a country like India?
Yes, that's an interesting question. And it has taken us more than 3 years now to reach this stage where I can proudly say that, to a large extent we can provide that data. I'll be happy to explain you tools and technology, but we are also India's largest medicine search engine, used by roughly 40,000 odd chemists pan-India. And that number is growing on a regular basis. So off the back of our search engine, we also provide a complete ERP and very small solutions for pharmacy retailers. There are many problems that these retailers face especially because of information asymmetry. For example, we are a branded generic market, and there are close to 700,000 medicine brands in India. And this information needs to be available to pharmacies. And we are the largest search engine, largest medicine database. So they use our product, and we provide different modules based on their needs. So these small software used by pharmacies, many of them are free, some of them are very small chargeable modules. These softwares feed data to our central cloud system. That's where we have used IBM Watson analytics and predictive analytics to generate these deep insights into demographic usage pattern.
Okay. And how much of India have you covered by your network?
Well, so not much. We primarily covered Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Indore, and Ranchi. We've proven that this model works. Unlike the earlier cases where the medicine research or the market research on pharmaceuticals was primarily based on very few sample collections for pharmacies, we provide real-time data from the market, which is the truth of transaction happening at the ground level. So the model is proven, technology available, and now we are looking to expand pan-India to keep the cost. So the idea is to keep the cost as low as possible or free for retailers so that they can adopt. They keep the technology adoptable so they can adopt. And once they adopt, it spreads. The data wealth keeps on growing. So so far we have built the technology and proven in 5 or 6 markets, as I mentioned. And you would see my examples are, metro, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So we have specifically chosen these cities to prove that if the product works in these cities, it will work anywhere in India. So that is where we are, and we are now trying to expand to all geographies so that we get more authentic and all demographic data.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One more question there. Yeah, go ahead. That was the last one.
Hi, my question is to Dr. V.K. Sharma. Sir, as you mentioned that there's a 30% of generic drugs are being supplied from India to US. But as in the last 3-4 years, don't you think the quality of the drugs has been supplied by the Indian companies is deteriorating? As the companies are getting in the notice and they are not able to maintain the quality, and they have been raised with the quality deficiency issues as it comes to the companies like the Dr. Reddy's, Cipla, Lupin, Intastor as the leading companies in India. So don't you think this, if the companies are not able to get the quality, so the other countries like the China, which is also a manufacturer of API and as well as the formulation, so that can take the advantage of this?
No, I don't think so. See, reason is, as I mentioned, US FDA has got their office in US and India, not anywhere else in world. So apart from US, when they have their office in India, which they are regularly increasing their presence, because 30% of US generics are being supplied from India. So they keep on reaching out to Indian companies and inspect them. And once they reach out to them, then they say that these are deficiency, which is very common. So most of the companies, they have to come out of those deficiencies, then only they will approve for further supplies. So if as a Indian industries keep on supplying to US, which means they are overcoming those problems, then only they are doing it. So it's a very routine process and it is a good process. There's nothing wrong in it. This is how we are improving. Rather, problem is our second. The quality of the medicine we are exporting are good enough. That's why we are only able to export, because we are exporting to all the good countries. But the quality of medicine we are consuming in India, there is a difference between the two. Now government is saying that they should have the similar parameters. So our problem is, in India, almost 52% of the pharmaceutical production are through contract manufacturing, or what we call P2P manufacturing. There are some issues, questions, they keep on coming, which government wanted to reduce it to almost to 10%. So that is also being worked out. Can we have all our qualities as good as which we are supplying to US? So our US supplies is not under question mark. Our question mark is what we are delivering in India. Partly because our production we supply to US or developed countries, and what we get it through contract manufacturing, we pass into our Indian market. But we are improving in all these parameters. That I will say. As far as China is concerned, China is being known for the more economical medicine, not for the quality medicine. So China, we are behind China as far as API and bulk drug is concerned, and we are also buying API and bulk drug in large quantity from China. But when it comes to formulation, globally, we are ahead of China. Our medicines are preferred globally more than the China. So we are not facing threat from China as far as formulation is concerned, but some other countries like Vietnam is there. Some companies, even in Sri Lanka, is there. Some countries are trying to come up, and that is why being a new pharma policy, government has tried to address it, which I feel will be able to do that.
Thank you.
If there are no questions, we'll wind up the session. Thank you very much for asking all those bright questions. And thank you, panelists. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your knowledge with us. I request Dr. Ronald to please present a token of appreciation to the moderator and the panelists. Dr. V.K. Sharma. Mr. Ashish Kumar. Dr. Vinod Nikhra. Dr. Anjana Batni. And I request Mr. Sandeepan Gangopadhyay to please facilitate Dr. Ronald. Thank you all.